I would now like to invite Brian Tucker and Clint Shaw up to present the Keeping Place project.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clint Shaw. I'm here with Brian Tucker, who I think is a familiar face to lots of people in the room. So Brian's a senior Banjima and Nyiyaparli man. And we're here today to talk about the Keeping Place project. So I'm going to start by giving you some background about the project and the outcomes from it, and then Brian's going to finish off at the end to give you his thoughts on it. But before I go any further, I'd just like to acknowledge that traditional owners, the Wadjuk people on which we're meeting today, of the land we're meeting today, and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I'd like to also acknowledge the effort Brian has made and acknowledge his effort coming down from the Pilbara this morning to be here and talk to you today. So thanks, Brian. So yeah, the Keeping Place project. It started a few years ago, back in 2017, as a collaboration between two native title groups. So they were Yinhawangka Aboriginal Corporation, Karlka Nyiyaparli Aboriginal Corporation, three mining companies, so BHP, Rio Tinto, FMG, as well as two statutory authorities, so the National Trust of Western Australia and the Indigenous Land and Sea Corporation. And essentially, where the project began is that, as we all know, for the last 40, 50 plus years, a lot of, or countless number of surveys have been conducted on country. And that's resulted in really vast depositories of information on cultural heritage being held by the resource companies that hasn't been made readily available to traditional owner groups. So the project set out to essentially develop some kind of technology solution that would actually support the return of that information back to, in this case, Karlka Nyiyaparli Aboriginal Corporation and Yinhawangka Aboriginal Corporation, and give them local access, ownership, control over that information. So that was the premise behind where the Keeping Place was about. So following years of consultations, meetings on country, workshops, identifying what this software needed to be, we're now landed at this point where we are now, where the Keeping Place platform has been developed. And what it is essentially, it's a GIS-based platform that groups can use to help protect cultural knowledge, manage cultural heritage, and also manage agreements and their native title responsibilities. So just a bit about the software. It's cloud-based, so it's online software. So in this case, Yinhawangka and Nyiyaparli have got their own private and secure Keeping Place site in which they access, and they've got full control and ownership over that site. As far as what the software looks like, it integrates GIS mapping features using GIS Cloud with a system called the InfoScope Land Management System, which is actually used by a number of different resource companies. Essentially, you've got two user interfaces, and it was really interesting during the development of the software to see the way traditional owners interacted, particularly with a map, to visualise information and reports held on their country. It includes cultural protocol and granular security permission. So what it means is if you've got information or data or videos or records that only can be seen by a certain gender or based on cultural standing, the software recognises the profile of the user and prohibits them from viewing things that they're not able to see. And that's all customisable according to the groups. As far as what you can see through the platform, and sorry, apologies if I'm rushing through, I am really conscious that we've only got a short amount of time and we've got the minister straight after us. It enables the collection of a vast range of information and the sharing of that. So everything from videos, drone footage, songs, audio recordings, stories, documents, spatial data, metal data, general data. It supports the return of all that. So as part of this project, it's set out to support the return of the spatial data held by the resource companies, and also the viewing of those reports that are being developed, but it also gives the traditional owner groups the ability to go out and have their own projects in which they're gathering and collecting information on country and bring it into their own keeping place site to make it available to other users within their community. The other part that I want to touch on is that it's underpinned by this really comprehensive data governance framework. So Terry Jenkin and Company, which is a law firm, Indigenous law firm based over on the eastern states, were engaged and they prepared a really comprehensive data governance framework. So that covers everything from privacy, security, data security, deposit, access, use of the information that's held in there. So a lot of thought's gone into the framework that would support such a platform to be used. One thing that might be relevant to today's discussion is as far as where to next for cultural heritage in WA and the reforms to the Act, is the ability of the software to support the management and monitoring of obligations under agreements and potentially cultural heritage management plans. So what the software does is it asks queries of other data within the system, and it can trigger notifications and workflows through to different staff members within the PPC to advise them an obligation event occurs on country. Talking about something like a future act, it can pull in the data that comes in from demurs every night, including tenant expenditure data, and then trigger a notification advising relevant people within the PPC that a new tenant's been applied for in their country, and that's all done automatically. As far as where to next and sustainability of the platform and what, and keeping with the premise of the project, which is really about empowerment and giving traditional owner groups local control and access over their own cultural heritage, was a vehicle in which this could potentially be made available to other groups. So a lot of thought went into what that vehicle might be and how it might work, and the way we've landed on it following Yinhawangka and Nyiyaparli, and their feedback is a not-for-profit company has been established, which is essentially a social enterprise, but the ownership model of the company is such that any group that uses the software becomes a member owner of that software, and they have direct input into how that software is managed and the future development of that software. So that's a very, very quick overview as far as the key outcomes from the project, but I've got BT standing here with me now, who is the chair of the steering committee that oversaw the development of the keeping place. And I'll hand you across to BT to talk about why it's important to him.
Just acknowledging you in my language where I come from. Most of you people probably haven't been there. Karlka National Park is my traditional homeland through my dad's side. The Fortescue Marsh is actually with my mum's side, 4th generation of it. I spent as a 20-year-old man out in heritage since from '83. So coming up and seeing all these projects for Rio Tinto, BHP, they had to come to see the traditional people like ourselves and many other elders that no longer with us. But also learning about the culture and the knowledge and the stories of songs and the heritage was the biggest important part of my life. And part of that was part of who my people were. And when songlines and stories that goes from one place to another and landmarks that represent the stories that continue in our songs and stories by participating with other language groups within the Pilbara. When you come from a background of a very knowledgeable people, how much of those knowledge would we carry from 1,000 years to get to today? And because of that is why why we developed this here, is to preserve the history, the story, and everything that is we are part of. And we've got places like increasing sites, blessing sites, sacrifice that runs through each other's homeland. And because of that spiritual connection that we have, is because it is why we bless it. And because of that, hardly any other people will never know until you go and actually see and where I come from and understand it. And because of that, it is important for that, put it in the databases to preserve it for the next generation. So my descendants from where I come from would see this here in the keeping place, and they will see it because it's important for me to leave that legacy, and that we still have negotiation with companies because there's particular places that we've got rights to interest, the rights of interest. And that's why we record and register these places, because it's important for us and for the next generation to have negotiation. And because of that, it's important because people like us who hold knowledge, we can't take it to when we're no longer here. But I've got a lot of things to say, but I mean, I say thank you today for having me here today. Thanks.